My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Psychologist Carl Rogers said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." But self-acceptance is a challenge for most of us, especially in a world of outer and inner critics. What tools are available to us that will enhance our self-awareness, promote self-acceptance, and lead to positive change? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Dr. Rita Louise, says that we may cultivate happiness and bring about change through self-awareness. Dr. Rita is a best-selling author and founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. She is also the producer of a number of full-length and feature videos. Dr. Rita has appeared on film, radio, and television and has spoken at conferences around the world covering such topics as health and healing, relationships, ghosts, intuition, ancient mysteries, and the paranormal. Her website is soulhealer.com, and she joins me this week to discuss her latest book, Dang, It Was Me All Along. Cultivate Happiness Through Mindful Awareness. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited, Dr. Rita Louise. Hi, Rita. Welcome back.
Hey, Victor. It is so nice to be able to hang out here with you for an hour and your listeners. I'm so excited.
I am, too. You know, it's been almost 4 years since the last time you were on, 3.5 years, when you had your book out called The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get started. But Rita, you've been described as having, and I quote, Fran Drescher's delivery without the wine. What a funny kind of compliment, huh?
It's a true statement. Somebody came up to me at a conference and made that statement. I'm like, I am so stealing that.
Absolutely. For our listeners meeting you for the first time, please share your path and how it led to the amazing work you bring to our world.
Well, I'm going to kind of take a different angle. So I joke around and say my day job is working as a naturopathic physician, a medical intuitive, an intuitive counselor, and an energy medicine practitioner. So that's what I do for my day job, where I work with people from around the world, helping them to get clarity in their lives, whether it's a physical issue, an emotional issue, a spiritual issue. I'll talk to you about anything but dead people. That's kind of my role. But one of the things that has come up a lot lately in conversations that I'm having with people is I do what feels right to me. People are like, well, you do all of this stuff, and how do you do that? And I'm like, but I do what feels right to me, and I do what I'm driven to do, whether it's write a book, produce a movie, and it just, keeps it fresh, keeps me moving forward, and it keeps me in a lot of joy in the things that I do all the time.
Absolutely. When did you recognize your intuitive gifts and the healing path ensue?
So I started on my spiritual path when I was like 12 or 13. And see, Victor, you'll get this one. When there was the TV series, The Amazing Kreskin, who had ESP, and I wanted to have ESP. But it wasn't until I was about 30 that I signed up at the Berkeley Psychic Institute and studied with them. So in the meantime, I already had this giant library of metaphysical books, and I knew all of this stuff, but I could never figure out how to tap into my intuition. And after being in their program for 3 weeks, I discovered that I had been very intuitive my entire life, and no one ever connected the dots for me. Like, if you have this kind of experience, that is a psychic experience. It's like, who'd have guessed? And so it took what I thought was going to be this arduous journey of learning how to do this into, I've been doing this my whole life, and this is what you want me to do. It's like, okay, I know how to do that already.
When you were a kid and you started having these thoughts and ideas, What was the reaction of those around you?
I don't know how to answer that because I never correlated what was going on with me to being intuitive, or that there was anything abnormal or out of the box tied to it. I would just kind of chalk it up to like, wow, that was a lucky thing to say or a good choice that I made. But it was never, I have this vision and this and this and this. I mean, it was never put out that way. Just me.
You were never told that you had an overactive imagination the way I was when I was a kid.
No, no. See, but you have to understand, my mom was a big sci-fi, I'm going to chunk her into the conspiracy theory world. She loved that series, The Prisoner, with Patrick McGowan.
Yes.
So that I grew up on, sci-fi movies and Twilight Zone and that whole genre. And so, imagination was what we had.
The only thing is, when I would say it to my parents, they would say, "Where's he getting this from?" You have an overactive imagination and so on. You are the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. What's the curriculum that the school offers?
So it is a professional level training program for people that are interested in becoming a medical intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. There's the feeder course, which is called Spiritual Growth for Personal Healing or something like that, where you get to learn how to work with your own energy, how to ground your body and coordinate with your aura. And there's some healing techniques for looking at your own chakras and possibly clearing them. And that just kind of opens the door to helping you work with other people. And it's a very gradual process, and my big thing that I tell people is, I am not teaching you how to be psychic. I am not teaching you how to be intuitive. I am just creating situations for you so that you can experience what you already have. Because I believe we all have that gift and that ability, granted on a spectrum of different people, but it's not about me teaching you how to do it. It's about making it so that you can recognize what you already have.
How can listeners find out more about the Institute of Applied Energetics?
So they can go to my website, appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. And actually, there's a free 50-page download that they can get that's called Jumpstart Your Intuition, that they can download and actually start learning how to tap into their gifts.
Wonderful. Now, the last time you were on with me was in 2020 and discussing your best-selling book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and Narcissist, Create Healthy Relationships by Healing Childhood Trauma. What inspired that book, and what did you share with your readers?
Well, that book ties into my new book, so I'm just going to put it all in one story because they blend, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I had ended a relationship with a gentleman, and the word narcissist came up, and it entered my awareness. I mean, it was becoming a more popular word in the vernacular, and discovered that the gentleman I was with was a narcissist. And when I started really kind of doing a self-review, I realized that most of the romantic relationships I was in was with narcissists, and many of the friendships I had was with narcissists, and that my mom was pretty narcissistic herself. And so it caused me to do this deep dive into what that was and what the dynamics were and how did I get here in the first place. And, I'm really big about, okay, so this is my experience and this is my journey, but presenting it in a way so that the reader can use the tools to discover themselves. And so it was just really my journey in, but not in a, again, it's my journey, but it's not in a, what, I can't think. It's not a memoir. How's that? It's not a memoir. But in understanding what was going on and what was going on in this relationship dynamic, and what do I need to watch out for, and what do I need to do, and here's some tools for healing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the book ends with a message of hope. And I had just met this gentleman when I was finishing up the book, and I had thought I had solved all of my relationship issues, and I figured that I was going to give it a try in this new relationship. Well, Victor, I failed miserably and ended up with yet another narcissist who he wasn't abusive. He just wasn't a good person. How's that?
Okay.
And so when that relationship ended, it was the end of COVID. My practice was not doing very good at the time. And I really had to reevaluate what was going on. I was looking to get a day job, which I haven't had a day job in years. And really all I wanted at that point in time was to be happy. And I also discovered that there wasn't anybody to point my finger at of why I wasn't happy anymore or why I wasn't happy in the first place or experiencing some level of contentment. And so I went and started to look to see if happiness was something that could be cultivated. Thus, the spawning of my latest book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, where it's another deep dive into what's going on inside of us so that we can make changes, because you can actually teach yourself how to be happy and how to look at the world from not a kvetching place, but from a place of gratitude. And I was like, well, if I can do this, I'm all about it. I was all in. And again, went on this deep dive, went on this journey, and did a lot of work on myself, which was remarkably easy, and wrote a book.
The last time, prior to your book title, the last time I heard the word dang was when Roger Miller had a hit in 1964 with the song Dang Me. Dang me, dang me. They ought to take a rope and hang me high from the highest tree. Woman, would you weep for me? And I remember that lyric very, very well. In any event, your latest book, as you said, is entitled Dang, It Was Me All Along, Cultivate Happiness Through Mindful Awareness. The word dang seems to have a Southwest U.S. origin. What's the definition of the expression of the word dang?
I don't know, but there were a few other words that I could have put there, and I felt that this was the least offensive. And there were people that didn't even want me to use the dang word, but I felt it was explanatory. It's like, that knock up the side of the head where you go, God, I should have had a V8 kind of feeling.
If the word ended in MN instead of NG, you'd have an understanding of where that expression came from. And I guess people didn't want to use the damn word, so they used the dang word so as not to offend others. So the book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, sounds like a personal revelation leading to perhaps taking responsibility for what has ensued in our lives. What inspired this book?
Hey, hang on one second. There's someone like shooting something off outside, which is making the dog. Raylan, come here. Come on, right here.
Dang that person.
Well, I mean, like a car backfiring, or I don't know. Sorry about that. All right, so now you have Dr. Rita and Raylan all in on this.
Wonderful.
Okay, so could you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. So your book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, sounds like a personal revelation leading to perhaps taking responsibility for what has ensued in our lives. What was the inspiration behind that? You talked about the relationship. What else inspired this?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to be happy and not I mean, this is going to sound weird, and you know me pretty well, Victor. I just felt very negative, that my world was negative, that I was negative all the time. And I didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be a chronic complainer anymore. I wanted to just have things be better, and I didn't know how to do it. And I wasn't sure what you were supposed to do to make that happen. And so that was the goal. That was the inspiration, to find out what I needed to do to make that happen.
And please share with our listeners who's accompanying you right now, because we hear someone else there.
So this is Raylan. So there's somebody outside like shooting something off, which is making him be better than barking.
What kind of dog is Raylan?
He's a poodle.
A poodle? That was a pretty low voice for a poodle.
I'm a poodle kind of gal. So.
I guess, absolutely. So you begin, dang, it was me all along, by sharing what you refer to as our mysterious inner world and describing the conscious and the subconscious minds. Many have misconceptions about both. So set us straight. What are the conscious mind and the subconscious mind?
Sure. So the conscious mind is the mind that we are consciously aware of. So we might be thinking about what we're going to have for dinner, or we might be thinking about the cat that's walking across the room, or what the heck is going on outside of my house that's making these like backfire noises, like right outside my house. That's weird. But it's whatever is in our, I'm going to say, visual awareness, even though it's not visual. But that is only a very small band of what is going on inside of us. There's also the subconscious mind that pretty much records everything that is going on in our world around us. All of our experiences get put into there. And it's also made up of the ego and our inner critic. I mean, there are a number of different parts. And one of the things that happens is that we have experiences in our lives, so you made the comment about, not using your imagination, and that apparently stuck with you and moved forward with you till as a subconscious program that on some levels directed your life, because, it's like, oh, well, they want me to be creative, but I'm not creative. I'm not supposed to be creative. That's all going on a subconscious level. And so as we grow up and experience life and have interactions with people and life experiences, we develop these little internal programs that control us. And so many of us are actually living our lives on autopilot, just doing whatever we do with the thought that we can't really change it. So something happens, we have a reaction to it, and we may act in a certain way or not act in a certain way because of this reaction. And that's all based on the programming that is happening in the subconscious mind. So it can lead us to victory, or it can lead us to the agony of defeat. And it really just depends on what our internal programming tells us.
And in my situation, being told as a child when I would share things that I had no real visual or physical source for, and being labeled as having an overactive imagination led me to practice the fact that if I did experience something, I didn't tell anybody, because I didn't want to be labeled as a kid with an overactive imagination. And It took well into my 30s and early 40s before I was able to open up and share these experiences again. So absolutely, that programming is very powerful. What is the source of our emotions, and how may we understand and learn to control them?
So our emotions are visceral reactions that happen. So we have a thought, and based on that programming, we have some kind of an emotional reaction. And so it's not that we can change our emotions, but we can use our emotions as kind of a roadmap to what is going on. So I had this situation happen and it left me feeling good or it left me feeling happy or content or satisfied. Or we can have a situation happen and it leaves us in a cycle of anxiety or worry or an active program where, well, I don't think I'm going to tell anybody about that because that was just too weird and I need to hide it because I have an overactive imagination come into play. And so, one of the things that I really talk about in the book is, about paying attention to what is going on, and our emotions and emotional experiences are a really good indicator of what program is being activated or not. How's that?
And of course, a lot of that has to do with the negative emotions, including fear. How do we learn to control that?
Well, I'm going to preface that with there was a study done that said that 80% of our thinking is negative. 80% of
Just
our
80?
thinking.
Just 80? That's
just
all?
80. And I'm sitting there, we sit, all right, back up, Rita. We sit there and think, most of us, I know me, that there are all these happy people out there and, they're enjoying life and they're happy and they don't have negative thoughts. Well, when I saw that number, the whole journey was just so encouraging to me. When I saw that number, I didn't feel so screwed up. Because if 80% of our thinking is negative, they weren't talking about me and they weren't talking about you. They were talking about people in general. But fear is usually the driver for many of our negative thoughts. And I can say this on your show and your listeners, I'm sure will get it. But fear is an emotion that's tied to the first chakra. And our first chakra is where we ground the body. And so when we have a situation happen that induces a fear response, which activates our fight or flight or fear response system, it makes our first chakra shut down and harder to let go. But when you stop and take a breath or take a little moment to acknowledge the fear or acknowledge the situation or acknowledge it's like, wow, I just had this response. It allows you to let go of the fear and address things more in the present moment, more in the here and now.
My guest is Dr. Rita Louise. Her new book is entitled, Dang, It Was Me All Along. Cultivate Happiness Through Mindful Awareness. Rita, please share with our listeners where they can get all of your books and find out more about you and your amazing work.
Sure. They can go to my website, which is soulhealer.com. That's soulhealer.com. And all of my books are available on that site. They're also available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, all the major retailers.
And one more time, your Institute of Applied Energetics, the website?
AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. But worst case scenario, if they click on the training link on the soulhealer.com webpage, it will also not take them there, but it'll take them to that free download minimally.
And that's that 50-page document that you share.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be back with more of Dr. Rita after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization. Their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going Om. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week, my dear friend, Dr. Rita Louise. Her book is entitled, Dang, It Was Me All Along, Cultivate Happiness Through Mindful Awareness. The title, Dang, It Was Me All Along, implies self-awareness. With all of the noise and distraction that our world offers, what are some of the ways we may cultivate self-awareness?
I mean, to me, the biggest thing is about just paying attention to what's going on. Something happens and we have a reaction to it, or we feel bad and we're not really understanding why, just stopping and taking that pause. And actually, I'm going to even make it simpler. Having curiosity about why we're doing the things that we're doing. And okay, so I had this interaction and I acted this way, but now on the backside, I'm not feeling good. So what could I do different so that in the end, I don't feel good? Because the goal is, what do I need to do to be happy? And not in a narcissistic, I'm going to take stuff from you, but what do I need to do to be happy? And so if I have to change how I interact with people, how I'm running my life, if it's going to leave me feeling happy and feeling joyful and experiencing gratitude, it's all good.
I agree with you 100%. But how many people actually get into that mindset?
They don't. That's the point of the book. And I bring up these concepts to people and they're like, God, it's really hard, or it's going to be a lot of work. And my experience, Victor, was that it was really, really easy. You just had to do it. And the thing that I can liken it to the most is dieting. Dieting is not hard. You don't have to lift weights. You don't have to dress differently. You don't have to do anything differently except change your relationship with food. Period. And you do that on a day-by-day basis, on a situation-by-situation basis. But it has to become part of your life. It needs to become the go-to thing and become part of your lifestyle. Versus, especially when dealing with your negative thoughts or toxic emotions, something that you try to pull out of the drawer, when everything's falling apart and going, well, how come these tools aren't working? They work if, like dieting, you do it every day, a little bit every day. I feel like my energy is dropping. You know what? I'm just going to stop for a second and take a few deep breaths, or whatever the tool is that you choose to use in that moment.
It's the old joke when someone says, it hurts when I go like this. And the answer is, oh, don't go like this. How many times do we have to be hurt before we recognize that?
We are not taught to pay attention to what's going on the inside. And one of the things, Victor, this was one of the things that I found so fascinating, was that in my research, I am looking at higher vibrating emotions, because when you are in a place of happiness or joy or contentment or whatever, you have higher vibrating emotions. And when your emotions are vibrating higher, you don't have negative thinking. You can get knocked out of the higher vibrating emotions, but when you're in them, you don't have negative thinking. And that was just such a simple concept to me. But when you look at the literature, like, articles and books or whatever, they don't address it. And when you look at what comes out of like psychotherapy or counseling, they don't address it. And these are the people that kind of have the market on happiness, but they can't really give you tools to get there, really.
Psychologist Carl Rogers said, and this is a quote, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." In your book, Dang, It Was Me All Along, you offer readers a series of steps to effect change in their lives, but it starts with having the courage to change. Why is effecting change an act of courage?
Because sometimes there are there are moments where I'm just going to tell it in a story. So one of my personal big issues, not that anybody would believe this, but is communicating my wants and needs to someone, especially that I'm very close to. And, so there have been a lot of situations throughout my life where this has just become the the bane of my existence, and we were talking, and I'm in a new relationship and I want it to be different. I want to be in it and be healthy. And so there was a situation that happened and it was bothering me. And so I'm in this whole like ruminating, bothering me, but I'm not saying anything because that's my pattern. That's my Rita cloak of invisibility. And I had to sit there and go, if you're ruminating, it means that there's something that you need to do or something that you need to say. So just freaking say it. And it was kind of a white knuckle experience of making that communication. And so sometimes that's the part that's scary, is when you actually have to like walk your walk and talk your talk, because you're bringing in behaviors or thoughts that you've never had before. And it can be scary.
Absolutely. You know the old joke about the Dalai Lama is attending a session at the United Nations, and he walks outside and there's a hot dog vendor outside. And he walks up to the hot dog vendor and says, "Make me one with everything." And then he hands the hot dog vendor that's the joke, part of the joke. He hands the hot dog vendor a $20 bill, and he waits and he says, "What about change?" And the hot dog vendor says, "Surely you of all people would know that change comes from within."
That's good. But Victor, you brought something up about accepting the self, and that's when change is possible. And I want to share with readers, I don't remember if I talked about it in the book. I'm just going to share it anyway. So I have so in the house that I'm in now, there's actually literally a library, study. There's a lot of shelves that I got a lot of books on. And there are so many self-help books about, fixing this and fixing that and fixing this and whatever, in my effort of finding happiness. I mean, this has kind of followed me all along. But what I discovered was all of those books just validated how broken you were and just reminded you of how screwed up you were. And so when I went into this exploration, I stopped watching videos on YouTube. I stopped doing all of those things because they weren't fixing me. They were just telling me how much I was messed up. And I said, you know what? You're just going to have a clean slate because you're just you. And apparently you're doing okay. And, you're kind of smart and, people like you. And so you can't.
So now the only books on your shelves are the ones you've written. Is that correct?
Oh, I wish. No, they just sit on the shelves, and I pull them out for research or whatever. Um, yeah. So, but I just want to say to people, I thought that was just such a critical thing. Like, one of the things that I was reading after that other breakup was about codependency and people pleasing and all of these topics, which weren't making me feel any better. And it's like, well, maybe you just need to stop that and focus on something different, focus on feeling better, which meant don't read those books anymore. So I'm not. And you know what? I feel better.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. But again, if you have those books, shelves lined with books, and you find some help from those books and some peace in those books, don't throw them away yet, or don't give them away yet. Rather, we don't want to throw them away. We just don't want to give them away yet. Hang on to them until you're ready to release them.
Well, I live in Texas, and I like going to estate sales. And I always go look on the bookshelf because you never know. And I have to tell you, I think if I had an estate sale and those books were for sale, they would shock a lot of people around here.
Absolutely. Now, many of those I know suffer from procrastination. I was actually going to put this question off until later. No, I'm just kidding. What advice do you offer to procrastinators?
I got the joke, Victor.
Thank you.
So for people that find that they're not moving forward, my suggestion is pick one thing, and do it. And so if it's a big project, okay, so I just bought a project house, which at times it's extremely mentally overwhelming. And I will sit there and go, okay, so what am I doing today? So today's project is I'm going to sand baseboards. That's today's project. And so if it's a big project, maybe not a house restoration that you need to do, then break it down into little pieces, like, well, it's going to take me about an hour to sand the baseboards, and that's how much energy I want to put in. And I'll do that, and instead of being overwhelmed. So if you need to clean out your closets, pick one area, or clean out one drawer, or empty one box, and whether it's you pick the project that you're going to work on, the little mini project, or you say, well, I'm going to invest this much time into it. I'm going to invest 20 minutes into it, and it'll be 20 minutes done. What I have found is that people that tend to procrastinate beat themselves up because they procrastinate. It's like, well, I really wanted to get this done, but I didn't get it done. And, it's still there. And when they actually put the effort in and do their little mini projects and they get it done, then it doesn't nag at them anymore. Shocking.
Now that's physical activity and projects and work-related things. What about procrastinating affecting change in their lives?
Well, I don't know that I have but I think it would be the same thing, just making that agreement with yourself that I am going to do this. I feel like it's more of making a commitment to yourself, whether it's emptying out a drawer or practicing a mindfulness technique or making the choice to respond to something in a different way. But I think bottom line, it all comes down to making that commitment to yourself and following through on the commitment.
One of the things that I've shared with people that I've officiated funerals for and people who've had memorial services is that tomorrow is never guaranteed. If you love someone, tell them today. If you have hurt someone, ask for forgiveness today. And if they have hurt you, offer forgiveness today, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. Those are important aspects of procrastination, putting off doing those things, because when you lose someone, it's too late to say, I loved you, or I'm sorry, or I forgive you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I never put that mindset into the procrastination realm. And so thank you for that, Victor, because I love that. I love that.
Absolutely.
But it's so true.
You offer a tool called the 17-second rule. What is it and how does it work?
I love the 17-second rule. It's probably one of my personal favorites. So the 17-second rule is like the 5-second rule. You know, you have a piece of food, it falls on the floor in the kitchen, you pick it up, you maybe blow it off 5 seconds. It's still valid and viable at 5 seconds. So the 17-second rule is very similar to that, except it states if I have a negative thought, I have 17 seconds to shift that thought into something else. You know, it could be a positive thought, it could be anything, or interrupt the flow of the thought. Because, and this is a Esther Hicks concept, because if you wait for the 17 seconds or you don't pay attention to it, the thought gets more momentum. And then after another 17 seconds, it might branch off into a tangent thought that might be just as bad, you know, and the longer you wait, the harder it is to put the genie back in the box. And so, and to me, that is, especially with any kind of thinking, that really is the key, because the sooner you can catch it, the sooner you can shift it.
Listen, that 5-second rule, it depends on whose house you're in. I'm sure
That's true too.
I'm sure on your floor we could leave it there for 17 seconds because I'm sure your floor is immaculate. My guest is Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking about her new book, Dang, It Was Me All Along. We'll be back with more after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Imagine yourself being transported to India, to the banks of the Ganga and an ashram in Rishikesh. Visualize that you are welcome to satsang with an American sannyasi who shares the wisdom of her guru. Your visualization has manifested. Join Sattvi Bhagawati Saraswati for inspiration and transformation every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
If I could be you.
And you could be me?
For just 1 hour.
If you could find a way
to get inside each other's mind.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out. And for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow.
I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking about her latest book, Dang, It Was Me All Along. In the theater world, they say everybody is a critic. In the mind world, we find the inner critic. What should we do about the bad reviews from the inner critic?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to tell it to shut up. So for people that are not aware, the inner critic is that part of us that tells us we're too fat or we're too lazy or we're invisible or we can't do this or we can't do that. And it often sounds like, a mean parent scolding us and talks to us in a way that we would never, ever, ever consider saying to somebody else. But the commentary is always like self-deprecating. And so one thing that I have found that really helps wrangle the inner critic, because the inner critic is just that, it's a critic, is to change the game, because now we got 17-second rule. And so the brain is going, oh man, you really screwed that up. That's because you're just so stupid. Okay, I've already used up my 17 seconds, and I'm interjecting and going, but I am very capable and I am competent and use things that are positive affirmations about who we are to shift the narrative back to, again, higher vibrating emotions, higher levels of energy. One of the things I found in playing with this I am, because you could sit there and go, well, I suck, which is the inner critic. But if you change it to things that you're capable of or confident, like I am funny, I am smart, I am not a procrastinator, all of those things are true to me. I totally own those statements about myself. If I wanted to use something like, I'm a superhero and I make millions of dollars, my inner critic is going to jump in and go, well, I don't know if that's totally true. And so I suggest to people in the book, if you're going to use this tool, which I find is a very powerful tool, keep it real. Keep it to things that you can own for yourself and about yourself. Because if you introduce something that on some level you don't think is true about yourself, you are going to activate your inner critic. Boom. Or at least that's what happens to me. But I think that happens to a lot of people.
We discussed the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. What is the superconscious mind and how may we access it?
Okay. So if you think about it, and I'm going to kind of give this a little bit of a visual. So the subconscious or the conscious mind is, what we see and interact with in the world around us. And so we can think of the subconscious mind as what's brewing underneath the surface. But the superconscious mind sits above the conscious mind, and it is through that, and I can say this here and it's a bit uncomfortable, but it's through the superconscious mind that we can connect to source. We can connect to the higher levels of vibrating, and interact with our higher self and our soul and the other aspects that constitute the mechanism and the working of the superconscious mind.
And is there a connection between the superconscious mind and what we know as the soul?
So So the superconscious mind to me is just kind of an umbrella, where our soul is, it's us, it's who we are. And I mean, granted, there's our programming that shifts who we are, but this is how I like to think of the soul. Like when I die, I'm going to be still pretty much Dr. Rita. I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that's going to change, but this is how my soul vibrates, and I would bet that I was kind of the same-ish, one lifetime to the next lifetime, because that's my soul essence, and it expresses in different ways in different lifetimes, but that's my soul essence. So it's who we are. In Kabbalistic texts, they talk about, it's the little piece of you that is pinched off from the totality of God, and it is what makes you that individual person is the soul.
How do we know when we receive guidance that it is coming from a higher source rather than the ego?
Great question, Victor. So this is the way I like to explain it. When it's coming from source, God, the universe, from your higher self, you want a guide, whatever word you want to put there. There's lots of people that talk to us, but that information comes through usually in a word, maybe a very short phrase. It might be, depending on how you receive information, an image that crosses your mind that just says, I tell this story about my dishwasher breaking and there was all water in the bottom. And I'm there with like a cup and a ShamWow trying to get the water out. And I'm like, okay, well, what can I use to get this water out? And I get this image of the turkey baster. And I'm like, okay, but I have to tell you, Victor, it worked great. It was way faster than dealing with the ShamWow to get the water out of the bottom. And so it comes through, it comes through as a suggestion. How's that? It's a thought that you have, or an image that you receive, or a phrase that you hear, or something you hear on the radio that's in answer to your question. When it's the ego, it will sit there and pester you and try to justify why you should do something or not do something. There's always commentary and corollary. It is definitely not the soft, still voice inside.
Think of Dr. Rita as the higher source and Fran Drescher's voice as the ego. I think that would be a good example. So we're on this wonderful journey of self-awareness, and some of our so-called family and friends are doing everything in their power to interrupt the journey. What should we do?
So, Victor, this has been a very real part of my life. So we always have a choice. We can choose to continue with how things are going and the status quo and maybe not being so happy, or we can choose to change it, and that might mean having a conversation with the person. It might mean limiting your time with that individual, or it might mean stepping back and having them just leave our presence and leave our energy so that we can be happy. Again, that's the part that makes it be a little bit hard, because sometimes the choices that you have to make can be hard. But I'll tell you what, you make that choice and you always feel better after.
Absolutely.
Always.
Absolutely. I've come to a point in my 71 years on this planet where I experience a sense of peace and contentment. What would you offer others trying to access those lovely places?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is knowing that it is possible. The first step is by becoming more aware of where your predominant thoughts are. If your predominant thoughts are in worry or rumination, or you're stuck in your inner critic, or you find that you trigger very quickly to situations that you're experiencing, then maybe it's time to stop and take a step back and ask why and be motivated to change it.
The wisdom of Dr. Rita Louise, her latest book, Dang, It Was Me All Along. Rita, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your books and find out more about you and your wonderful work.
Sure thing. So they can go to my webpage, soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com, soulhealer.com. And all of my books are there. There's articles, there's all kinds of stuff on there that I invite them to explore. My books are also available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that good stuff. And if they're interested in my medical intuition, energy medicine, and intuitive counselor training, they can go to appliedenergeticsinstitute.com.
Rita, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing this amazing wisdom you've accumulated and all of the heartfelt words that you share with us every day. Thank you so much, Dr. Rita.
Thank you, Victor.
And thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.